Hi there, welcome to Funding by Alex. Today I would like to talk to you about presenting to investors. So, your pitch deck and then the presentation. So, let's go through the process. I have done a few videos about the pitch deck and how to create one. So, all the elements that are common in the pitch deck and how to style them, how to create them in the optimum fashion. So, point one is creating your pitch deck. So, look at it at version one, because after every presentation, you get feedback and you might want to change it. Maybe not, but possibly you want to change the contents of your pitch deck a little bit. You refine it, like not really change, but refine it. From that pitch deck, so version one, you also create your teaser deck. This teaser deck can also change. So, a teaser deck is actually a short version of your pitch deck. So, the pitch deck will have a lot of information, maybe more than 10 slides, and your teaser deck is maximum maybe 10 slides, usually six, seven, something like that. A teaser deck is exactly what it's supposed to be, what it says it is, basically a teaser, meaning people are enticed or teased to talk to you, to actually have an interview with you and have basically a presentation that you can give to them. So these are uh, short versions of your pitch deck. So it doesn't contain all of the bells and whistles of all the plans that you have in the years, etc. Just a short. What is the idea? Who is going to do it? What is your objection of objective? In the end, the issue is maybe not so much that you need to go even into the team details, but yeah, you can actually include that as well. So then sending out your teaser deck. So in essence, this teaser deck is basically your digital business card, so to speak. It's a PowerPoint presentation normally or a PDF. Can also be a investor memorandum where you just describe it. It's a bit different in Europe as in the US or in Asia, but um, all of these things come down to the same thing, where you actually trigger investors to want to talk to you, basically. So sending them out to these investors, so that can be in multiple ways. So the best way is, of course, to do it in person, where you actually have direct contact with someone and you can say, hey, can I send you this, and they will actually look at it. Cold send out is also possible. There's a lot of general email addresses for venture capital funds or angel investors who are taking pitch decks from people. That is normally the more impersonal way of doing it. So the issue there is that you will be on the pile of maybe 100 pitch decks they get in a week, and it will not get any special attention. If you do it through a channel where you say, okay, this is at least ending up on the desk of the right person at the right time, but at least they'll look at it. That's the least you can actually, or the most you can ask for, basically. So sending out your teaser deck is the step to trigger people to want to meet you. So after that, you get some feedback. So sending it out and waiting patiently is usually not the thing. You need to also follow up. Say, oh, did you have a chance to read it? Before they firmly say no. Again, they get maybe 100 a day, even sometimes, where they are, swamped in different pitch decks, and they might think it's a good idea. But if you're the one, it's just like sales. You're the one actually following up and calling them and say, hey, did you have a chance to look at it, or would you like to set up a meeting? Just reminding people politely, don't be pushy, don't be obnoxious, basically, but just, did you have a chance to look at it? So that is the way to set up the meetings with the potential investors. It's can be quite quick. It can also take a couple of weeks before people are good and ready to actually set up. So people are, of course, with a lot of pitch decks, you're also meeting a lot of startups. Just to give you an impression, there are a lot of investors in the world, but of course, the number of startups is, the ratio is quite out of whack. So in the end, there are a lot more startups wanting to meet with investors than investors have time to meet with startups. So you have to see, like, if you get an investment meeting or get a meeting, a preliminary meeting, at least they're interested, curious enough to hear what you have to say. That can be for various reasons, but Setting up the meetings with potential investors normally is for the purpose of investment. In some cases, they also are just trying to get as much information from you as possible because they've invested in another company in the same sector. So this is something you can't really prevent. You have to also just therefore really look at, like, okay, what have they invested in? Did they invest in something that is potentially my competitor, or are they building something similar? Are they looking to build something similar? That's something that should become clear during the meeting, and then you can also just close off that avenue for them. Then, provided, of course, you guys have done a good job, and it can be one investor meeting or it can be multiple investor meetings. Normally, the first meeting is just an introduction. Then afterwards, you actually go into consecutive meetings where they are going deeper into the numbers. They are going deeper into, the idea or potential pitfalls, potential obstacles, etc. Then, if that all goes well and you do get an offer, you get what they call a term sheet. So venture capital funds have term sheets, and angel investors might go for a safe note, basically. Where this is basically, agreement for future equity, basically. Standard agreement for future equity. That is, in essence, if you look at valuation wise, that is a bit safer for people to still leave that up in the open. So okay, I'm going to give you, let's say, $10,000, and then there's a safe note that says, I'm entitled to equity in the future, and then based on the valuation, they'll work something out in that safe note. Then that is, of course, always a negotiation. So you might want to part with, maybe only 10% in your company or 15%. And then the investor says, yeah, hey, I would like to invest more in your company, or you need more money. Therefore, I need more equity. It's always a matter of risk. So if you are at a very early stage, maybe your idea is fantastic, just to put your 2 feet on the ground. The idea is actually something that is not worth anything until it's being executed. So without the money from them, your idea is worthless. Yeah. So in the end, it's something that needs money and resources behind it in order to get done. Time is also an essence. So your idea might be good, but there are other people with similar ideas or existing companies that can pivot to incorporate your idea into theirs. So the clock is ticking. That is what investors also know. So if I don't invest in this guy, maybe I can invest in someone else who's actually doing the same thing. But I mean, the point is that you need to understand that you need to negotiate. So in the end, you can stick to your negotiation. Your negotiation total. Basically, we say, okay, I want to maximum get 25% equity out. Now, in the end, it's not the end of the world when you say, look, I walk away when people want more, but my advice is to be flexible, because without the money that they are putting into you, into your company, basically, it's not going to happen. Then, after this term sheet negotiation, to do something called due diligence, meaning that they are checking everything that you have claimed in that pitch deck. They will talk to some of your customers. They will talk to your team. They will talk to various suppliers. They will check your books. They will go into every nook and cranny of your company to see whether what you said is true, is real. Yeah, like if you claim that you have 1,000 customers who are paying, then you better produce those 1,000 customers who are paying, basically. So this due diligence is just a matter of like checking whether everything is on the level, there's no fraud or whatever, basically. Then after that process, that's we're talking about months here, that you're down the line. So due diligence can be like somewhere between 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, basically, depending a little bit on the time invested, is how big the operations are. Then investment is made, so the money is transferred. So in essence, it's in your bank account, and then the equity is issued, which means new shares are issued in the company. Which equity issue is I think the moment when ownership changes hands of the company. So normally you issue new shares, you don't sell existing shares, but that's basically the moment when it all becomes official and they do get a board seat or they don't. That is also something that is part of the term sheet negotiation. Then we go to the meeting itself. So when you get to a meeting, because this video was about the meeting, It can be virtual, can be in person. So virtual means that you do it through video call. Video calls are quite advanced. Obviously, you can present a lot of things. PowerPoints you can present through Google Meet or Zoom or one of the other video conferencing platforms, or in person. In person is, of course, always the most powerful way of doing it, because you have a lot more options to do it. You can actually, show the product. You can, have a bit of a feeling with people. It's more of a chemistry sort of thing, whether people are showing you, time of day, or giving you the time of day, basically. That in a personal meeting, so if you're in the same city or in the same country, at least, then that's easier. If it's cross border, so you are, for example, you're based in Europe and you are talking to American investors, or you're in Asia and you're talking to American investors or European investors, or the other way around, that's a bit more difficult. And then usually a virtual meeting is definitely for the first meeting that is virtual. So they are just for introduction purposes. Okay, who are you, what do you do, and why do you think your idea is going to do it, and how is your team going to carry it out. Follow-up meetings, when they really are going to invest a lot of money in your company, they would like to see you in person. And luckily enough, of course, they will either invite you to their office to come over and present to them, or they would like to see your operations while they're at it, and visit you. So you start with the introduction, of course, don't underestimate that part. So, who are you, and what are you doing? And that's the moment you establish rapport. Yeah, rapport is in essence like the undercurrent that you need to capture in any conversation. So people need to trust you. This is all of a trust thing. If you look at investments in startups, normally is investing in people, not so much in the idea, because the idea can change, the people cannot. So trust is a commodity here that is built very slowly and quickly lost, also if you are going into the wrong direction, or you don't do what you say. In essence, don't do what you promise. So this is actually where you do the chit chat, where if you're not good at this sort of stuff, it is sometimes a bit more difficult. I do this for a living. I'm very much enjoying the chit chat part of it, but there are people who really loathe it, and it's torture for them, basically. So my advice is like, learn to sit through it, or have you the founder, basically, or have a co-founder that is maybe very good at it, and they do that part of the equation. Frame everything in goal, problem, solution. So you are very methodical with regards to what is the goal, what are the potential problems, obstacles, and what is the solution. All of the entire pitch deck and the entire meeting, you should answer basically in that direction. Then, of course, there are visual people, there are auditive people, and kinesthetic people. So the people you have across from you, I think I've done a video about this before. Visual people are people who process information best by seeing it. There are people who prefer to hear it, so they are like that. Kinesthetic people are people who are more feeling people. They also need to physically feel things. So visual people are by far the largest category. Then you have auditive and kinesthetic actually being the smaller portions of the number of people. There are people who have combinations of these preferences, obviously. What works the best, and that is actually, I have a teaching background, so if you look at what works best is actually when you people see and hear things at the same time. So you are presenting, you are talking, and in essence, for these kinesthetic people, you need to actually have the product or something to feel, something to experience, something in a presentation also that speaks to their emotion, basically. And visual people, they hate text, so they would like to have probably more pictures than text. Auditive people are really listening a lot to it. So if you look at the way you can recognize it, and that is maybe something very much when you're very nervous and you're presenting to someone, that could be a bit of a challenge. But visual people, they have a tendency to look up in the sky, a bit like when they're thinking, because they're looking at the picture in their head. Auditive people, they will look as to the side, so because their ears are to the side, basically. Um, so to see whether they are hearing it. And kinesthetic people, like I mentioned, they are really looking at feeling, and they are going into detail about texture and all those things. Um, Preparing for that, and this is also part of the handout thing, so preparing something for each to in the presentation to relate to. That is the way the information comes, like enters their mind best, basically. uh, Try to have one speaker. It's not forbidden to have multiple speakers. Like I said, if you have a very good numbers guy and you have someone who is very good at chit chat, but the numbers guy is not very good at chit chat, yeah, then maybe do it with two, but try to incorporate everything into one speaker, because that is also something people can focus on then. And you have one story, you don't have constant interruptions, also with the new speaker actually picking up where the other left off. Um, yeah, except of course when there is really specific expertise in handling Q&A. So if you handle the Q&A, then of course you have maybe other co-founders who are, let's say, the tech guy who hasn't spoken in the entire presentation, could actually handle a Q&A question. Um, yeah, an answer with a technical answer, basically. And preparing handouts. So that is also something that is quite. It only applies, of course, when you have a physical meeting. People receive information better when they're holding something. So that is literally in sales. Actually, when people ask you, "Hey, would you like to have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea?" So a beverage, a warm beverage. Literally, you warm up to the idea. So when you invite someone, or it's a home game, so you are the one who is actually hosting, then of course that is very good that you give someone a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, basically. But preparing handouts, if you don't have anything like that, and at least a piece of paper with, let's say, a summary or a graph or something like that, at least something that they need to hold in their hands, because then they're opening up their body language. If you sit like this, meaning your arms are crossed, people have the tendency to do that because they're feeling comfortable, because they're feeling defensive. Then information will not enter their mind as willingly as when you have an open body language. So you force actually open body language when you are giving someone a piece of paper, because then they have to hold it in their hands, and therefore they open up their posture. So then in a meeting, always end with follow-up steps. So in the end, you have follow-up steps after the meeting. So okay, we have a first meeting. You've gone through the idea. So what is the steps? What are the steps after this? That means basically that they might have to go back to their boss or a committee, that investment committee that is actually deciding on whether or not these things are worthwhile pursuing, and then also agree on a time when they will let you know. Um, Hardly, and that is, I'm not saying it ever, if it doesn't happen, but hardly on the first meeting you get a yes. It's a lot of information to process, especially larger operations. However, there are, of course, these cowboy stories about angel investors writing a check on the spot because they like the guy, or the guy explained it very well. All these power founders from some big startups who are not inhibited by any shame. Basically, they might have pestered someone to do that. It's a bit like like I said, cowboy stories, basically. Like really quite spectacular stories, basically. So don't. Hang yourself up on that sort of stuff happening to you. If it happens, lovely. Love to hear from you also when you have one of those war stories to share. But don't expect that sort of Shark Tank type of thing, because that is a show, and it's actually a lot of the deals that are maybe agreed on Shark Tank later on are in the due diligence phase. They are being shut down as well, or changed. This is basically, a good idea. Here you go. I'll offer you this. Now that's for the dramatic effect on television. That's the case, but it's not how the real world works. Because let's face it, if you had $1 million and you needed to invest in someone, would you want to write a check on the first date or not? Yeah, that is actually the reality. Would you also want to know where they live, who they are, who their family is, everything about them, everything about their business? I mean, under normal circumstances, you would also do the same, no? So in the end, why would you expect an investor to actually take a leap of faith based on your blue eyes, as we say it in the Netherlands? Um, so that is something that follow-up steps are always there. So what is next, and when do we hear from you? And when do we hear whether there's a follow-up meeting where they go into more detail on certain topics? Then I come to the point of tips and best practices. So I've done this a few times, so more than I can I can remember actually. Basically, starting with reading the room. So, like I said, these are visual, auditive, and kinesthetic people. If you read the room, you can, during the presentation, you can fine tune your presentation a little bit more towards their visual, to the information processing preferences. Especially if you have some personal information on these people, like, okay, they are into a charity, or they are very much into sustainability, or they have a impact investing edge, or like, everybody has a life. They're not Investors are not just investors. They also have kids, they also have families, they also have maybe a favorite baseball team that they are supporting. So this sort of stuff is actually handy to know. Or maybe you find out during the presentation that someone has a certain hobby that they share with you. Now, that's actually reading the room, where you can work it into your conversation. You have to be a bit quick on your feet, obviously, but it can really make the difference if you have this rapport. Like I said, like, this is the thing, the undercurrent. If you have no chemistry with the investor whatsoever, so it's just rattling off a story and the data and the facts, you know, unless the guy is completely all business, or the lady is completely all business, him or herself, yeah, then your chances are actually very slim on securing an investment, because they will invest in people, not in you, but in people, not in the idea. Um, so do extensive research on the investor. So, which actually doesn't only mean like, oh, what is his favorite baseball team? Maybe that's very irrelevant at that particular moment, but more about what is the company about, what is the investor about, what has they done in their life, and of course the portfolio that they have. So, are there other startups in their portfolio that match yours? So, is there something upstream or downstream from you that could fit into that? So, investors normally are looking at strategic portfolios. It used to be the domain of venture capital and private equity, but now also you have angel investors who are building portfolios like that. You have some very refined angel investors. It's not just some eccentric rich guy anymore with a checkbook who is writing you a check just because he feels like it today. Like, I have more money than I can spend, or something. That is also, again, a bit of a romanticized picture of investors, or angel investors, in essence. So a lot of these angel investors are part of syndicates. So syndicates means that maybe their check size is actually not in the millions, but together you have a lot of angels that are syndicating together, meaning they group together and they're actually investing together. So if you get one guy, there might be a lot of other smaller venture capital funds or angel investors who are joining that. So that is actually also the research you need to do. You need to see who they connect to. A lot of people also say, okay, I don't want to be the first guy investing in you, but as soon as you have someone else on board, hey, I might actually have the snowball down the hill, and it becomes a big avalanche, basically. Normally, also looking at check sizes. If you look at the first check sizes, can be quite small, maybe maybe a couple of $1,000s, basically. And then as soon as you have certain critical mass, actually it can become bigger ones. So again, it's easier for someone who is a high net worth individual to write you, let's say, a $5,000 check, or $10,000 check, than $1 million check, because $1 million by any standards, people are rich for a reason. They don't just throw away money out the window to half-baked ideas that someone thinks after one pitch that they can actually convince someone to invest $1 million. So be a bit modest also with regards to what you're asking. So stay realistic. That is also very important. So I am good at this. I'm not so good at that. So maybe you don't have a co-founder who can complement your weakness, but then they can work on that. Or maybe that investor can be one of the co-founders, where they bring and the money and the expertise in actually putting this together. So there are a lot of examples. There's a good friend of mine who works in consultancy with me. He actually was telling me the other day that the most extreme case that he came across was that there was a startup that asked him to invest and then also work for free for them. So you know there are people who think, hey, that's a good idea, and it's just that you know, even angel investors would like to have a salary job, of course, in the end, when they are joining a company and doing the work. So even though they might actually invest in the company. So this is something you need to be also aware of, that, it's not just asking, it's actually also like, okay, what's in it for you and how can we compensate you for whatever, basically. And of course, you need to be honest about your weaknesses. So if you say like, "Oh, I'm good at this, but not good at that," that's something they would really like to hear up front. Because if they find out and you haven't told them, it's actually going to be a bigger problem than when you're honest up front. I live my life in the sense of honesty is last longest. So you need to always be honest about everything in life as much as possible. Salesmanship is of course always a little bit, making things shine a little bit better, or shine a little bit more than they actually do. But in essence, what I found is that if you blatantly lie about startups, and I've seen that several times in my career, that I've advised people that were having pictures of their startup, and then it turns out to be completely different. Eventually people find out, and then the results are not good. They don't get the investment, and then you just have a lot of upset investors, basically. Then one thing that I need to really, these are maybe in the sense of red flags. So I've put one here. So there's one that says we have no competition, which a lot of startups actually say that. Startup founders say that in a meeting. They say, "Oh, we don't have any competition." Yeah, then that also means that you haven't really done competitive research. There are maybe not directly companies that are doing exactly the same as you, but there are incumbents who are covering currently the market, and you are trying to disrupt that. So you never have no competition. You always have competition, and you need to address that. Companies that could potentially cover or start to cover, maybe incumbents that are actually expanding their service range with that. So otherwise it's end of meeting. So with regards to red flags, there are a couple of things that you need to keep in mind when you are presenting. So about the numbers, so if you look at market size, for example, I've sat through a meeting which went very well until we got to the numbers, where the CEO of the company I was advising actually was presenting the numbers, and he thought that he could capture 100% of the market. Now, that's something we should have probably briefed him more about, but that was actually a huge number, and he was thinking like, okay, I can address the entire market. So this is just total addressable market and total obtainable market, actually. Basically this sort of thing is also one of the red flags that investors are looking for. You're having an issue where investors are doubting your skills to see ahead, or look ahead, basically, or plan ahead. If you are looking at this very short-sighted with you know yeah a way of not seeing competition, or the opportunity, any obstacles on your road. So there are obstacles, maybe some you haven't identified yet, but it's good to think of them ahead. Then, of course, you need to talk about the idea and the roadmap. So when you talk about your idea, it's actually what you're doing now. The roadmap is actually where it's going to go, in what direction. So there might be some milestones in on that roadmap. So okay, I'm going from A to B to C to D to E, etc. And then finally, when you go to Z, that is also the end game. So, what is actually the end game? Sometimes the end game is not something that is obvious to investors from, and maybe not obvious to the founders either. But for example, I've been involved in a company that was a biotech company that is doing DNA research. This DNA research company is actually something that where they were actually testing people. Yeah, they wanted to have all Indonesian people actually tested. The problem with that is actually that the yeah, Indonesian population being tested. Okay, eventually you run out of DNA tests, and then at some point your end game is actually the data that is collected. So it's actually not selling tests, but it's actually the data that is collected with the tests. So these are the things that with regards to end game. Then traction and metrics. So make sure that traction is and metrics are in your presentation. So this is basically the numbers that you need to present to investors. Um, Storytelling. So everybody likes a story. If it's only numbers, then the story is actually putting it together for them. So it's actually making the emotional connection for investors to invest in your story. So you can start with maybe the ideal customer profile. This is a problem that Mary had, and you're solving it with your solution. And then, last but not least, of course, you can introduce the dream team. So the dream team means that you and your co-founders, or your core team, doesn't have to be all as co-founders, also includes any advisors you might have. So introducing these people, these are the people that are doing the operations, doing the execution of the idea, which is very vital. Normally, what I've seen is that people tend to skip over it because they're talking about yourself might not be natural for everybody. It's just very important. Like, who are you, and why do you think that you're suitable to make this idea a success? So that is actually the importance of introducing yourself and your team. What is very important is like, okay, what have they done? What are the success stories? Which are the companies? Which are the relevant experiences that they have? Then we've come to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. If you need help with your pitch deck or your presentation, I'm an advisor, Golden Dragon Capital, that's the company. If you would like to send me an email, alex@goldendragoncapital.co. We're part of PT Akaya Abadi Sejahtera. It's a company based in Jakarta. We do pre-IPO advisory, we do M&A advisory, and fundraising advisory, obviously, as part of M&A. If you like to, reach out to us and have a friendly chat without the meter running, please feel free to reach out. Alex@goldendragoncapital.co. I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you. Bye bye.